Rebirth 91, Restart Life. Penguin Pile. 658-802-1624, welcome everyone. Keywords of the novel. Rebirth rises up with the wind without pop-ups. Rebirth rises up with the wind. Download the complete text. Rebirth rises up with the wind. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Rebirth. The pungent smell of disinfectant woke Zhou up. Opening your eyes, the first thing you see is the infusion bottle hanging on the iron frame above your bed. The medicine bottle is made of glass, with a white rubber stopper at the bottom. The infusion tube is a thick cow tendon-colored rubber tube, and there is a glass air trap between the rubber tubes. The liquid is dripping inside one by one. What's wrong with myself? Zhou wanted to support himself, but found a severe pain coming from the right side of his lower abdomen. I had to work hard to reach my neck and finally saw the surroundings clearly. This place is very familiar, but theoretically, it should be the kind of familiarity in memory. County Hospital, Surgical Inpatient Ward. The room is very cold, only comfortable in summer. The floor is made of polished fluorite cement, the lower half of the wall is painted with green paint, and the upper half is made of white latex. Opening the quilt and seeing the white gauze covering the wound, Zhou was already certain that he had been reborn and returned to the end of the first half of his freshman year in 1991. In my memory, I played a game with my classmates yesterday and went to bed that night with abdominal pain. Based on the knowledge I learned while reading miscellaneous books at Xinhua bookstore, Oji concluded that I had an attack of appendicitis. Dad is on a business trip, and it was Mom who called and ordered a company car to deliver him to the hospital. I slept on the operating table during the surgery in my previous life, and when I woke up, I had already returned to the hospital bed. The surgeon who performed the surgery on himself, Xinhua, was still making fun of himself at the time. Watching the silently dripping medicine, Zhou couldn't help but feel a little excited. This was reborn into the most beautiful years in this era. The world is constantly changing, and one's own country is the one with the fastest and most drastic changes in the world. In just 7 years, the general income of residents increased from a few tens to 1 or 2,000, which is a concrete and subtle reflection of this change. Although new and old ideas are still conflicting in society, and people have been confused and anxious by various ideological trends, it is undeniable that the country has passed a turning point, the era has changed its appearance, and most people are mentally prepared. Next, unlimited potential will emerge. This era is full of opportunities and challenges. The only flaw is lying in the hospital bed on the first day of being reborn. I have written 2 novels in my past life, one about the beginning of 2012, and the other about traveling to the chaotic Song dynasty with internal and external troubles. Because he had already imagined similar situations countless times in his mind, Zhou at this moment was actually not panicked in his heart. Thinking of the protagonists in his 2 novels who have worked hard all their lives and never lived a day for themselves, Zhou couldn't help but shudder. That kind of life is definitely not what you want. In today's era, there are countless elites hosting the latter 2 tasks, so there is no need to worry about them like the protagonists in novels. In my previous life, there were indeed many regrets. Take those 2 novels as an example. At that time, the creation was actually rushed, and many aspects were not handled perfectly. There were some shortcomings that some book lovers were generally dissatisfied with. If those who can handle it well, if they haven't wasted more than 10 years and started writing earlier, those 2 novels should actually become phenomenal works. If one can stand on the wind, even a pig can be blown up, but the pig that missed the wind can only be a pig. But the bigger regret is that I was 10 years late, only to realize what I should pursue the most. In my previous life, I once had a friend who accidentally said a sentence that could be considered a soul torture to Zhou. Zhou, those old papers that you love to study and specialize in, what benefits do they have for your life and work? At that time, Zhou was truly speechless. It wasn't until the completion of the 2 novels that Zhou Ji realized that from the beginning, he should respect his own heart and choose to do what he loves the most, rather than wasting his precious time for the sake of food and clothing, making his precious youth an ineffective cost. The old paper pile in the mouth of friends is actually a special hobby of Zhou Ji since childhood. Ancient Chinese history and traditional culture. It is indeed difficult to find a corresponding job in this major in the next decade, and even if one does, their life may not be as satisfactory. But it was not until 20 years later that Zhou Ji realized that he had casually pieced together materials from the pile of old papers and written a novel, which would receive so much recognition, affirmation, and pursuit from so many people. If you are born with talent, you must be useful. In the pile of old papers, there is gold. I am not alone. Now there is an opportunity to start over again, and Zhou Ji has made up his mind to never waste his life. Even for those book lovers who once loved their works, he wanted to create them to the fullest. Let more people see them. At the very least, it is still a familiar environment and familiar people. This made Zhou Ji feel that compared to the protagonists in his novels, he was really lucky too much. You child. You're still staring blankly without even the medicine, don't even know how to call a nurse. A familiar voice sounded urgently at the door. Zhou Ji turned her head and saw a slightly chubby middle-aged woman with short wavy hair permed on her head appearing at the door, holding a net bag containing water bottles, wash basins, face pads, fruits, and the like. Her face was full of anger. Mom. Nurse. Nurse. The medicine for the 5 beds is gone. Mom's figure disappeared in a flash, and she hurriedly called the nurse to go. Hello. Young Zhou Ji could only silently fill in the unfinished sentence in his heart, facing the empty door of the hospital room. In no time, the mother and nurse walked back and started changing the dressing bottles for Zhou Ji. You see, it's all bleeding back. Mom complained as she shook Zhou Ji's bed and made him lie in a semi-reclined position. It's not a worry at all. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a white coat also walked in and said with a smile, I happened to be on ward rounds, so I thought it was my sister-in-law's voice. It was indeed correct. Seeing the white coat, Zhou Ji quickly said, Uncle Xinhua, I'm bothering you again this time. Hey. Why do I have to say it again? My mother quickly asked by Daqiang, Xinhua, Zhou Ji is like this. How many days can we be discharged from the hospital? White coat is Lu Xinhua, the surgical director of the county hospital, and also a classmate of his parents. Zhou Ji's hometown is located in Zhechuan County, a small county town under the southwestern border of Manzhou City. It is the only place outside Lingnan that is rich in lychees. The small county town of 1991 was like this, where many people were familiar with each other and relied more on relationships to do things. Those who had a slight influence were all looking down without looking up. Lu Xinhua held his hands in his white coat pocket and looked at Zhou Ji, saying, this kid is doing well. He's probably going home to recuperate in 3 or 4 days. Once he's done, he can take out the stitches. Zhou Ji said again, thank you, Uncle Xinhua. Lu Xinhua smiled at Zhou Ji and said, you really have a crow's mouth. I haven't even checked yet, so I said I have appendicitis. The result is really accurate. How did you know? Zhou Ji said, I played a game yesterday, which was considered a strenuous exercise. At night, when my stomach was spinning in circles, I knew it was terrible. There is a book at Xinhua bookstore about this. Diagnosis of common family diseases. Stinky kid, he's smarter than your father. Lu Xinhua pretended to examine Zhou Ji's wound and the hanging bottle. It's okay, it's just a minor surgery, just lie down for a few days. After finishing speaking, he said to his mother, sister-in-law, you can go ahead and do whatever you want. Don't worry, the diviner said this kid will settle down at the age of 16. Is that already fast? Mom frowned and said, just passed. Lu Xinhua smiled and said, "Anyway, you can't eat on the zhouji. Just come and see me after work. Let this kid carry an empty bottle and exchange salt water himself." After speaking to Zhou Ji, he said, "I'm a high school student, isn't it a problem?" Zhou Ji quickly nodded and said, "No problem. No problem. Xinhua, you don't know, so you said to hurry up and get something. When you came back, you saw him staring at the medicine bottle, just like a fool. He didn't even know to call a nurse when the water was gone. Didn't you just wake up, Mom?" "Don't worry, it won't happen in the future," Zhou Ji smiled. "My mother gratefully said to Xinhua, thank you to Xinhua yesterday. When Lao Zhou comes back, our family will come back to thank you." Lu Xinhua shook his head and said, "My older brother this week. Everything is fine, just too straightforward. Sometimes, sister.in law, you also need to advise." Mom quickly glanced at Zhou Ji, pulled Lu Xinhua to the small balcony of the ward, and whispered, "Xinhua also knows. Pap the big county town, what nonsense is it? It's like a gust of wind blowing all over the city." Lu Xinhua lowered his voice. "Actually, Lao Zhou has been working hard lately, or it would be nice to change places." Mom sighed and said, "It's better for you guys to do this." "What's so good? It's not like every snake bites." Lu Xinhua smiled and shook his head, continuing to comfort his mother. "We all admire old Zhou's character. This is because he has finished all the hard work and tiredness, and some people want to board the boat with ease." Then the voice grew even lower. "There's just a bit of news now. My sister.in-law advises my brother to move on, so hurry up and move on." Mom and Uncle Xinhua were whispering there, unaware of their conversation, and most of it had already been overheard by Zhou Ji. In his past life, Zhou Ji never cared about his parents' work matters, and his parents never said these things in front of his children. They just encouraged him to study hard. This matter was only discovered by Zhou Ji through conversations with adults a long time later. The county agricultural supply company received a batch of fake seeds, which were purchased. As soon as the seedlings came out, the farmers discovered a problem and reported it to the Industry and Commerce Bureau. After understanding the situation, my father, who is the Director of Industry and Commerce, will handle the agricultural input company. However, Deputy Director Lu Chang'an believes that this year is a year of change, and handling it in this way may cause passivity in the county. In the end, Lu Chang'an went to the county leader and the secretary Hua Yuliang reported the situation, and my father went to Manzhou and reported the situation to the Municipal Administration for Industry and Commerce. In the end, my father obtained guidance from the Municipal Bureau and the farmers were finally treated fairly. However, rumors began to spread in the county that my father would be transferred from the Industry and Commerce Bureau to the Statistics Bureau during this year's transition. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Uncle Xinhua. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Uncle Xinhua. In recent years, the three bureaus of finance, taxation, and industry and commerce are the most nourishing units in the county, while the Statistics Bureau is purely a cold bench. It is only during the year of population census that there is a lively atmosphere. The vehicle used by the Industry and Commerce Bureau is Santana, while the vehicle used by the Statistics Bureau is the old Mustang Jeep with holes and broken winds. In fact, it cannot be said who is right or wrong about this matter. As someone who has deeply studied the history of song, Doji now sees it very clearly. At most, it can only be considered that each has their own position and position. The method of handling this matter, under the current unregulated and standardized management system, can only be public speaking, and fair speaking. If things can happen a few months later, then nothing will happen. Because the national industrial and commercial system is about to undergo a major adjustment, county bureaus will be directly under the jurisdiction of city bureaus, and the impact of county committees on the industrial and commercial system will be greatly reduced. However, this happened now. Under the current dual management system, there is a slight deviation and a hint of irrationality. So, under the push of some kind-hearted people, my father disregarded organizational principles and reported to the higher authorities, causing a passive situation in the county. So there was the wind that Uncle Xinhua heard now. And this kind of rumor, in another time and space, ultimately became a fact. The conversation between my mother and Uncle Xinhua gave Zhou Ji a wake-up call. If you want to realize your values and ideals in the pile of old papers in the future, you must take the first step now. To transfer to studying humanities and enter the humanities major. But if we bring it up now, it will definitely attract strong opposition from the family, especially my mother. Because my mother often says, learn mathematics, physics, and chemistry, and you won't be afraid to travel around the world. And now, I cannot come up with sufficient reasons to persuade them. The political situation in the small county town had become very internal competition by the year 1991, just like the situation in Gujing Township, Shuangxi Town where my mother used to be. If it weren't for Grandma's strange gaze and criticism from her surroundings, biting her teeth and letting all her daughters go to school, the daughters of the Su family would not have had the opportunity to leave Gujing Township and achieve their current accomplishments. Based on my previous life experience, certain decisions at certain stages of life are indeed crucial. Zhou Ji couldn't help but ponder how to operate to solve these two urgent issues. If only in terms of qualifications, whether in the political arena of Zhechuan or in the business line of Manzhou Industry and Commerce Bureau, my father is very capable. The first job for educated youth returning home is as a secretary to the Industrial and Commercial Bureau. At that time, the director was a retired soldier, a 1.8-meter Shandong Han, a machine gunner who fought from the Liberation War to the Korean War. In theory, this is the target that the enemy's artillery fire focuses on, but Lao Wang was so stunned that he didn't even have an eye for sand until he was discharged from the military to the Zhechuan Industrial and Commercial Bureau, making him a lucky general. At that time, in the small courtyard of the Industrial and Commercial Bureau, Xiao Zhou was most afraid of this old Wang bureau. With a loud voice and a military demeanor in every move and gesture, the only way to express a liking for children is to grab them and throw them like sandbags, often causing Xiao Zhouzi to scream uncontrollably. Although straightforward and heroic, as a retired military cadre in the past 7 years, Director Wang struggled to recognize large characters and even wrote his own name crookedly. So when the county was recruiting from the returning educated youth and preparing to strengthen the administrative team, my father's beautiful calligraphy fell into the eye of Director Wang's eyes. After listening to several articles and reports, Director Wang was even more confident that he had definitely found a talent. Dad's articles and reports were particularly adept at citing historical materials and allusions, combined with current affairs and political discourse. The so-called citing classics and citing classics were among the few cadres of that era. Later on, every time the Industrial and Commercial Bureau held a meeting, Director Wang would basically set a good example at the beginning, then pick up his teacup and lean back on the rattan chair with a smile, saying, "I only have so much broken here." Now, Secretary Xiao Zhou will continue to chat with everyone. During that period, the specific affairs of the Industrial and Commercial Bureau were basically handled by my father as the secretary, while Director Wang only listened to reports and signed them. That experience greatly trained my father. Later, with the changes of the times, he was transferred to the County Finance Committee, and later became a district branch secretary in Qiming District. Upon returning, he was selected to be sent to the Provincial Party School for training, becoming one of the first cadres in Sichuan Province to enter the Provincial Party School and obtain a college diploma. After returning from the party school training, I happened to encounter the County Sugar Industry Tobacco and Liquor Company splitting into Tobacco Company and Sugar and Liquor Company. The organization wants my father to temporarily serve as the manager of a sugar and wine company, and adjust the business after the separation to the right track. Dad's appointment as a manager of a sugar and alcohol company actually affects his own progress. Before taking office, my father mentioned to the organization that both husband and wife work in a sugar and alcohol company, which can easily lead to gossip. Because my mother, a educated youth, first went to the county cement factory after returning to the city, then went from the cement factory to the supply and marketing cooperative, and finally went from the supply and marketing cooperative to the sugar and alcohol company as an accountant. Now that I want my dad to go, he makes a request to avoid suspicion. In the end, the organization adjusted my mother's work again. My father still served as the manager of a sugar and wine company for a term, while my mother was transferred from the company to an environmental monitoring station with a relaxed and efficient job. Slowly and slowly, until now, those party school classmates who were in the same batch as my father have all started with the deputy county mayor. However, my father delayed these 4 years, and although he later re-entered the business system, he only went from deputy county director to director. The key is that it still blocks their way, and Deputy Director Lu Chang'an is very dissatisfied with his father, constantly acting in private. In another time and space, the current rumors in the county ultimately turned into reality. Dad used to work in the Industry and Commerce Bureau, where he was very successful and achieved remarkable results. The first thing to do upon taking office is to rectify the market. Merge the previously prosperous but increasingly declining Yangtze River fresh market with the bamboo and wood grain market, which is also the fruit market during the lychee peak season. And the previous bamboo and wood grain market will be expanded, with a bottom-level agricultural market, a top-level small commodity market, and a 3-story shopping mall. This market is very distinctive because the location of the market is called Zhangjiagu, which is located at the lower part of Zhangjiagu at the north entrance. Although it appears to be a 3-story integrated market, there are roads leading to each floor on the hillside, so it is more appropriate to understand it as 3 independent markets with overlapping spaces and interconnected stairs inside. This design is very successful and has great benefits for the convenience of shopping for the general public and the dispersion of people in the market. Even though this market has been dismantled with the changing times many years later, it is still talked about by the older people of Sichuan. And the old farmers' market that was finally vacated was used by my father to build a family building. In recent years, apart from the county party committee courtyard, popular units such as the Finance Bureau, Sugar and Alcohol Company, and Tobacco Company, 7-story residential buildings in the county town are almost rare. Being able to live in such buildings is something that everyone in the county envies. Due to limited funds for preparation, my father adopted a partial fundraising approach. Additionally, due to insufficient housing, my father allocated his housing qualification, which should have been allocated to him, to take care of the retiring old employees that year. Zhou Ji and his family still live in the old dormitory of the Sugar and Wine Company. These measures have all earned my father a good reputation. I was still calculating my dad's chips in my heart, but my mom and Lu Xinhua had already finished talking on the small balcony and returned to the hospital bed. Uncle Xinhua said, "You kid, you've been mischievous since childhood, and even worrying about it is not enough to describe it. It's really scary for your mother." Zhou Ji said, "Uncle Xinhua, you have wronged me. At least this time, it has nothing to do with being naughty, right? This time it's just pure bad luck." As Lu Xinhua was about to laugh, he heard Zhou Ji say, "Besides, I don't know about Uncle Xinhua's deeds when he was an educated youth." "Where did I get to? You bastard." Lu Xinhua pretended to have a fit and sighed again. "You don't even know how miserable we were at that time, except for your dad." The educated youth who went down to Qiming district back then really didn't object to him. "Oh, I haven't heard anything from my dad yet." Zhou Ji was very interested. "Uncle Xinhua, you need to tell me something." He, that's something we can't finish for 3 days and 3 nights. To put it simply, we're all starving. Just your dad, during the day, he learned how to grow rice, corn, vegetables from his fellow villagers, and even collected manure and fertilizer when he had time. And he even raised 2 pigs. Isn't it? My dad can still raise pigs. How could he not? He even organized literacy classes for his fellow villagers at night. But he can get it. Speaking of these paths, Xinhua sighed and said, "Do you know what the most delicious thing Uncle has ever eaten in his life is?" It was during the Chinese New Year that all the educated youth in the village ran to your father's place, where we killed the New Year pig. There isn't much seasoning either. That dish of white water and fatty intestines, we still dipped it in ginger and garlic seasoning to eat. White water. Fat intestines. That thing can all bite. But on second thought, it may be true. What was most lacking at that time? Lack of oil. And fat intestines. They're just too oily. Uncle Xinhua even swallowed his saliva, as if reminiscing about the delicious food of the past. Because of your father, Qiming Township has always been an advanced group of educated youth. When we return to the city, it is also the first batch. Compared to those 3 draws and 1 later on. Forget it, you don't understand these things either. There's nothing I don't understand about this. The first batch of educated youth who returned to the city had relatively easy job arrangements, mainly from government departments, which were different from those who later entered the fertilizer plant and cement plant. So keep your clever spirit for yourself, and learn more from your father. Uncle Xinhua continued. Later on, he became a branch secretary in Qiming district, and the villagers in Monxiang were very happy. They spread the word that our Zhou Jiqing had returned. Qiming Township. Anyway, I haven't dared to go back and take a look until now. I guess this is because there were many bad things done in the countryside at that time, fearing that the villagers would bring up old things and embarrass themselves. Zhou Ji smiled and said, "What's so scary about going here? Uncle Xinhua, you don't know how to send medical treatment to the countryside." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Yang He. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Yang He. Uncle Xinhua was taken aback and said, "What brings medical care to the countryside? The medical conditions in Qiming Township are not very good, right? Uncle Xinhua, you are currently the second in command of the hospital. Organize some people, bring some injections and drugs, and go to Qiming Township to do physical examinations for elderly people over 60 years old, treat simple symptoms, and train doctors at the health station. It's not difficult for Uncle Xinhua, is it?" "Hey." Lu Xinhua's eyes couldn't help but brighten. "I believe that Uncle Xinhua's return to Qiming Township with such a posture will be very welcomed by the villagers." Zhou Ji smiled and said, after Uncle Xinhua returned to the city, he was admitted to a medical school. From this perspective, it can be considered that he was trained by the villagers in the past few years. This is called the prodigal son returns without exchanging money. That makes sense. Lu Xinhuadun suddenly felt happy, then suddenly reacted and stared. What kind of prodigal person doesn't exchange gold, no big or small? Let's fight. After finishing speaking, he said to his mother, "Sister-in-law, take a look at your son. There's really nothing to worry about. I need to go to the dean's place." "Is that all for now?" The old mother, who was silently listening to a big and small argument, chuckled, "Then hurry up and don't delay the main task. This time, it's really causing you trouble again." Lu Xinhua had just left when a head popped up at the door of the ward. "Zhou Ji, I found you." "Auntie, are you there too?" But it was Zhou Ji's desk mate at school, Yang He. Zhou Ji's grades in school are also considered good, but he is still a mischievous and active member. In today's small county towns, even the best middle schools have the same quality of teaching. But now it's okay, and as we move forward, this gap will widen compared to schools in big cities. There is 1 liberal arts class and 3 science classes in Zhou Ji's class, with 1 class being liberal arts and the other 3 being science. Although class division was only officially established in the 2nd year of high school, it was only a minor adjustment during the Zhou Ji period in their middle school, with most classes being determined from the 1st year of high school. Zhou Ji is in class 2, and in fact, in his second year of high school, he will become a science student. Zhou Ji prefers humanities, but when it comes to grades alone, the two subjects are also relatively average. The reason for choosing to attend science classes is still because of the popular saying nowadays. Learning mathematics, physics, and chemistry, one is not afraid to travel around the world. The fundamental reason is that reading humanities makes it difficult to find a job. The overall limitation of teaching level has led to several average-level subject teachers in each class of Jichuan Middle School. For example, in the second class of science where Zhou Ji is located, Li Dashan, the Chinese teacher, not only has a beautiful chalkboard handwriting, but also a very careless level of professional skills. Zhou Ji doesn't often listen to Li Dashan's lectures. He knows what he should learn and what he should know. Chinese language classes are his time to read Jin Yong's Ancient Dragon, all borrowed from street vendors. However, the Chinese language score still remains at the top of the entire school. Li Dashan actually doesn't pay much attention to Zhou Ji, because he hasn't even read through Records of the Grand Historian and Ziji Tongjian himself. However, Zhou Ji's ancient literary background comes from Su Ancheng, the fourth cousin of the first person in the education system of Jichuan County. Su Ancheng attended a private school in his childhood and graduated from the Nanjing Education Institute of the nationalist government before the liberation. He was the first legitimate college student to leave Jichuan. After the liberation, Su Ancheng served as the first director of the Education Bureau in Jichuan County. The education industry in Jichuan County in New China was basically planned step by step from scratch by his elderly family. The big families in Gujing Township attach great importance to education. The Wang, Lu, and Su families had a fierce dispute after the liberation, which almost led to an armed struggle. It's not about competing for land or water, but about competing for the location of primary schools. Finally, the fourth cousin stated that the Su family will take out the private school and no one needs to start construction. It will be converted into a primary school on site. This allowed Gujing Township Primary School to be located near the Su family. Suan City is already over 80 years old, with a strong foundation in ancient Chinese writing, calligraphy with brush strokes, and even ink painting, all of which are top-notch. After discovering his son's talent in this area, the father asked him to study with his fourth cousin for a period of time. Uncle C's education definitely has its own set, without specific guidance for learning, only teaching Zhou Ji one thing, how to read. The result was that Zhou Ji's reading volume was terrifying. After finishing his books at home, he would spend every weekend at the Xinhua bookstore, with a wide range of knowledge, especially his Chinese language skills. Even his teacher, Li Dashan, dared not challenge him. Even once, Li Dashan went to the city for a meeting and directly asked Zhou Ji to substitute for him in class on Peacock Flies Southeast. The whole class listened attentively to those two classes, and the class teacher Su Yoji passed by the classroom and stopped to listen. As soon as he stopped, he finished two classes and waited for Zhou Ji to leave the classroom. Su Yoji reached out and patted his shoulder, asking if he wanted to transfer to the humanities class. However, at that time, Su Yoji was just talking. Yang He is a rural child who is Zhou Ji's desk mate. He feels honored to have a desk mate like Zhou Ji, so the two became good friends. There are now 10 districts in the county, with many primary schools and 3 middle schools. But now only 2 high schools have high schools, namely Jichuan County High School and Majia Town High School. Among them, the top students are selected, and the teaching quality of Jichuan County Primary School is the highest. Most of the students inside will enter the junior high school department of the county, accounting for the vast majority of enrollment quotas. Therefore, most of the children in the same class come from small towns in junior high school and have been classmates since the first grade of elementary school, becoming very familiar with each other. However, only a very small number of excellent elementary schools in other townships can be admitted to the county's middle and junior high schools, with only about 10 students in one class. But high school is different. High school is a big class with more people than middle school, and some middle school students may miss out on the middle school entrance exam. In 1991, in Sichuan, many children from families who studied well would choose to attend vocational schools if they could, because this would allow them to start working a few years earlier. A few students with poor grades will also be squeezed into the high school department of Majia Middle School. So in the high school department of the county, there are more students from towns and other junior high schools. Students from rural areas live on campus and attend evening self-study, city classmates study day and do homework at home in the evening. It naturally divided into two groups. However, by the end of the week, this is a special case. He has close friends among his classmates in the city, and also among his classmates living in rural areas. Zhou Ji particularly appreciates the qualities of those rural classmates. Take Yang He as an example. The father of this child, old Yang Tu, was also a legend back then. At the age of 20, he opened a silk shop in Sichuan County, wearing a silk shirt, leather shoes, and playing mahjong with silver and gold bars. 4 or 9 years ago, I was still in my hometown of Baimi Township and bought 200 acres of land to welcome the new China. The old man got married very late and was 20 years behind Yang and his mother. It wasn't until his 40s that he had Yang and his elder brother, and it wasn't until his 50s that he had Yang and his mother. After Yang he was admitted to the county high school, his family couldn't afford it. According to Yang He's sister-in-law's advice, it's better not to study and go home to farm. In the end, Yang He reported to his old father and divided the family for his brothers. He then gave his own property deed to his elder brother, and his sister-in-law provided him with further education. I can't blame my sister-in-law for being ruthless, and she doesn't have any left at home either. Urban cadres still have less than 100 yuan in salary. In rural households, they can guarantee that you have food and clothing, but they cannot guarantee that you have money to spend. Besides, siblings and sister-in-law also have their own children. It would be great to be able to do things like Yang and his siblings. As far as Zhou Ji knows, there are far more than one classmates like Yang He in the school. These students have a poor foundation and are barely able to be admitted to the county middle school. Except for a few, most of their academic performance is average. But they all have a characteristic, which is that they are very serious and hardworking. After evening self-study, they ran to the street lamp by the toilet to continue their hard work and were caught by the teacher, not just one or two. Compared to these classmates, Zhou Ji's parents earn 1 month's salary and his mother earns 300 yuan from finding a way out. Although having a grandmother at home and the cost of transportation is considerable, it can definitely be considered generous. Even if the salary is the same as the county industrial and commercial bureau chief, even if my father is honest, the welfare and labor protection of the unit, and the small gifts he receives during holidays and festivals are still quite a lot. For example, every year lychees are on the market, and Zhou Ji's family definitely does not lack lychees to eat. Zhou Ji will take some to the evening self-study and share it with the classmates who attended the evening self-study. Then, because he controlled the kitchen and dining table during holidays and weekends at home, Zhou Ji often took advantage of his position to invite his close classmates to his home for meals. My grandmother and mother both come from the countryside and enjoy the excitement and children. I particularly like rural children. And, girls. My mother has complained more than once that during the holidays at home, there are more guests than those who come to visit my grandmother. Zhou Ji likes rural areas. In the past, he loved to go to his uncle's house during holidays. Later, when he had his own rural friends, he liked to go to the homes of his rural classmates during holidays. I usually go there for 1 or 2 weeks and enjoy helping with work, but it's not about having good character, it's purely curiosity and interest. On the other hand, I have learned a lot of rural skills from my uncle and rural classmates. Yang He's qualities impressed Zhou Ji very much. The first time we went home, we saw him greet his parents, siblings, and sister-in-law by putting down his backpack. Then, he poured water for Zhou Ji and picked up a broom to clean the courtyard. After cleaning, he picked up a load of millet and went to the grain station to fetch rice. He was really busy from the moment he entered the door, never stopping for a minute. At the age of 17, carrying a 100-pound pickpocket, Zhou Ji still couldn't catch up after walking up to the field. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Wei Fei. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 4. Wei Fei. Of course, with a hardworking and simple child like Yang He, who took charge early on, there would inevitably be a completely opposite reaction. I said this ball didn't have a kick, now it's easy to kick it with a knife. A small head wearing thick glasses popped up behind Yang He, with a sincere smile in his eyes. When he saw his mother staring, "Oh, hello Auntie." This is the opposite of Yang and his classmates, the reactionary, who Zhou Ji has been playing with since middle school, Wei Fei. Wei Fei's father is a teacher at a rural primary school in Anil Mountain, and his mother is an educated youth. Later, the two got married and stayed at the foot of Anil Mountain. After Anilshan Elementary School moved from the mountains to the suburbs, Wei Fei's family also moved to the suburbs and lived in the small bungalows allocated by the school, but they didn't even care about the houses and fields in their hometown. Wei Fei's mother is not in good health either, and the whole family basically relies on Wei's father's teacher's salary to make a living. Her mother occasionally goes to the city to sell some eggs and fruits to support her family. Wei Fei also has a sister named Wei Yi on her head, who is very beautiful and was the school flower of their generation. The characteristic of Wei Fei is laziness, very lazy, to the bone of laziness. He is the youngest in his family. Even if his family is not well off, his parents treat him like a spoiled child. It's really like reaching out for clothes and food to open his mouth. The diligence attribute of rural children is zero in this child. Zhou Ji had seen it with his own eyes at Wei Fei's house, and for some reason, the broom by the door fell to the ground, blocking the entrance. This child felt like she hadn't seen it before. She walked straight into the door from the broom without even thinking about picking it up and putting it away. But God knows it's unfair. Yang He studies hard day and night, and his grades can only reach average in the class, while Wei Fei is not very focused on his studies. However, the three subjects of mathematics, physics, and chemistry are simply failing. Once, while playing at Zhou Ji's house, I saw a Rubik's Cube that Zhou Ji's third son had given Zhou Ji. After playing with it for half an hour, the child figured out how to turn it into 6 faces and even taught Zhou Ji the method. At that time, there were no online tutorials or manuals, and Wei Fei was solely developed through his own intelligence, which surprised Zhou Ji to the heavens. Wei Fei's sister is also impressive, not only beautiful, but also very good at studying. Last year, she was admitted to the English department of Sichuan Foreign Language College with a high score. Perhaps stimulated by his older sister's admission to university, Wei Fei began to study seriously this year, and made rapid progress in the 3 subjects of mathematics, physics, and chemistry. Now, the grades of these 3 subjects are mostly in the top 3 in the grade, and a bachelor's degree has already been reserved. In my grandmother's words, this is the feng shui of the Anil Mountain ancestral tomb of the Wei family. In my mother's words, this is when a boy starts to work hard and be ruthless. Mom's words made Zhou Ji roll his eyes. Didn't Yang and him work hard? Aren't you tough enough on yourself? What is the result? The result was that when my mom talked about Yang He, she sighed, and Wei Fei, who was too lazy to burn snakes, became someone else's child in my mom's mouth. However, Wei Fei's bias toward subjects is quite severe, and Chinese and foreign languages are a big challenge. Wei Yi, the younger sister, came back to use her vacation to tutor him and Zhou Ji in English. Perhaps due to the similarity in language subjects, Zhou Ji's effectiveness was very obvious. However, Wei Fei's understanding of English is like a wooden head. Wei Yi was so angry that he chased Wei Fei with his family spoon on the small playground in Anil Mountain Township. Even the idiots and the foreigners speak English, proving that even fools can learn English. Why can't you? Why can't we just do it? Look at their Zhou Ji. At that time, Zhou Ji was very pleased to see the two siblings flying all over the place. At least with the beautiful sister, we also became other people's children once. Monk. Airplane. The arrival of two close friends made Zhou Ji very happy. I said, Monk is so honest, how dare you come to the hospital to ask for the ward number? It must be your idea. Then he offered his blessings to Wei Fei, saying, speak less, you turtle. Sooner or later, this day will come. Nonsense. Mom quickly said, are you coming to see Zhou Ji? Come in quickly, I'll go wash the fruits for you. After his mother left, Yang Hutsai looked at the 4 bottle hanging by Zhou Ji and said, fortunately, the holiday is coming soon, so I can't delay my studies. I can still comfortably avoid the final exam. Zhou Ji smiled slightly on his face and murmured silently in his heart, is this also called comfort and comfort? Sometimes he tries to persuade Yang He, but on second thought, he can't. Because once Yang He loses his support, his learning situation may be even worse than it is now. I had no choice but to respond and say, my mother may not let me go to your house to play this holiday. Yang He said, it's okay, next time. The conditions at Yang He's home were quite poor. Every time Zhou Ji thought of going to the house for the first time, Yang He's parents would take down the last piece of preserved pork ribs that had been hanging on the kitchen beam for 10 months to entertain him. They also thanked Zhou Ji for taking care of Yang He in the city, feeling very ashamed. In another time and space, Yang He eventually returned to the countryside, and he didn't do anything to help his good friend. Due to one person or one thing, Zhou Ji later led a life of self-exile, completely cutting off contact with his former friends and classmates. After 10 years of reconnecting, the relationship inevitably faded. One of the most regretful things for Zhou Ji in the previous life was not maintaining the relationship between good friends. In this life, Zhou Ji decided to cherish it well. Wei Fei spoke on the side and said, why don't we go to my house? You're quite generous, Zhou Jibai glanced at Wei Fei. I'm afraid that the monk's daily work will affect your laziness. Wei Fei couldn't figure it out. I didn't happen to be lazy when he was working. How could it affect him? Your logical relationship doesn't hold. Because without comparison, there is no harm, Zhou Ji said. When your parents compare you to, they will definitely beat you up and force you to be like a monk. Oh my goodness. Wei Fei, a science dog, suddenly realized that he had also been to Yang He's house with Zhou Ji. This kid's hard work was really chilling. We must take strict precautions and never let our parents know that there are still varieties like monks in the world. Turning his head to Yang he said, so what? Why don't you go, monk? Let's go to my house, Zhou Ji agreed. You can stay at my house and at most find a time. I'll go back with you to spend a few days with my uncle and aunt. You're all like this now. Yang He felt a little uneasy. This is a minor surgery, I'll be home in a few days. Yang He thought for a moment and said, then I'll cross the river this afternoon and tell my parents. Yang He's family is in Baimi Township, separated from Xinhua town by the Yangtze River, and they still have to take a ferry. Mom came back with fruit and asked, have you eaten yet? The two shook their heads. Mom took out 5 yuan and said, then hurry up and eat. Zhou Ji was immediately dissatisfied. Tofu pudding rice is just a piece of people, Mom, you have never been so generous to me. If you want to be as sensible as a monk and learn as well as a plane, Mom will give you so much. Mom said, tofu pudding rice has no meat, so you can't call it 2 pieces of ballast cage. Zhou Ji was stunned. So. Let's just leave the end where these two goods each have their own differences. After thinking for a while, my mother still didn't pay the money and said, I also have to work. It's just right. I'll take you to dinner. Zhou Ji chuckled when he saw Wei Fei's disappointed expression. This kid must have had a plan to save money before, but now it's ruined. I don't even have the ability to scrape the leftover from my mother, just you. Thinking of what had been discussed before, he quickly said, Mom, during winter vacation, I want Yang He to stay at our house and study with me. Okay, but we need their parents' approval. Yang He said, Auntie, I'm planning to go back in the afternoon, come in a few days, and go back before the spring festival. The monk is the most sensible. My mother likes to directly determine, but the sentence added later is not very good. It's not like my family's Joji. Let's go, bring some fruit. Mom, bring me some books tonight. And a notebook and pen. Got it. Joji's family was not wealthy, only had a lot of books. My father at home is the most picky, except for long and lengthy works. He only reads People's Literature and October. Mom wouldn't even touch People's Literature or October, she prefers Reader's Digest and Yilin. Zhou Ji is the least picky, basically as long as there are words. When the family had no means, they started reading Water Margin and Romance of the Three Kingdoms at the age of 10, which were traditional vertical versions. At the age of 11, they started reading collected works of Lu Sun. And some Soviet literature about my father. There is also a set of books that are easier to read than the ones mentioned above, which were still preserved in every household at that time. Selected works of Mao. When going to play at a classmate's house in the countryside, one can hold on to the Zhou solstice, even the Chinese almanac, and Buddhist scriptures. People's Literature and October were the most prestigious literary journals in the country at that time, and their prices were also not cheap. Zhou Ji's monthly subscription of journals, magazines, and book purchases at home is a significant expense. My dad is also a book lover. 2 years ago, Xinhua bookstore went to Hong Kong to participate in a book exhibition. The godfather of the director of the cultural center called back long distance and asked the county officials if they wanted the banned book with a smile on his face. This book is a traditional vertical photocopy version of the Hong Kong Business Book Society, very exquisite. At that time, it cost over 400 yuan per set, while Zhou Yuanjiang's salary was less than 100 yuan per month. Secretary Hua Yuliang counted the number of buyers among the cadres, signed and received the book, registered it, and carried out a very serious process. If this book is leaked, the collector must be punished. There were not many people who wanted to buy this book in the end, but my dad registered to buy a set. The complete and unedited set of Xiaoxiashing's works was hidden by his father in the bedroom, very well preserved, but it was still secretly studied by Zhou Ji. After Dad discovers it, he will teach him family law. Zhou Ji quickly claimed that he was only studying ancient folk customs. Of course, this excuse is not immune to punishment, but the Zhou family has always been open-minded. Dad said that if your child can tell me your research content to convince me, then I won't punish you. This approach is also a tradition of the Zhou family. For example, when Zhou Ji reached the 3rd grade of elementary school, he didn't want to take a nap anymore and wanted to go out and play at noon. His father threw Zhou Ji a book called 300 Tang Poems, and said that if your child didn't want to sleep, he would recite a poem for me. Only after reciting one poem can he go and play. 2 minutes after Zhou Ji opened the book, he threw it back to his father and said, "Dad, I'm leaving." Dad was furious, but Zhou Ji said that I had completed today's task. The candle shadow on the mica screen was deep, the long river was gradually falling, and the morning stars were sinking. China should regret stealing the elixir, with a blue sea and clear sky and a heart at night. Then, in his father's astonished gaze, he flew away. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Going Home. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Going home. After that, my dad no longer forced me to take a nap on the Zhou Ji. However, the family soon added another, complete Tang poetry. Therefore, when Zhou Ji used knowledge as an excuse to study the works of Xiao Shaoxing, my dad still followed the old rules and presented evidence. We should seek truth from facts. So Zhou Ji explained his reading experience to his father, believing that although the book was about stories from the Song dynasty, the social background and structure were from the Ming dynasty. He also gave many examples of officials, titles, and customs. There are also several dialects in the book, such as Yil and Shobu Dao Tai, which are still perfectly preserved in the current Sichuan dialect. This not only proves that the Sichuan dialect belongs to the northern language family, but also proves that it greatly preserves the traces of ancient languages. The specific evidence is precisely in this book. Therefore, Xiaoxiaxing's works are a clear evidence that the Sichuan dialect can be regarded as a living fossil of northern ancient language. Although Cantonese is also a living fossil, it is heavily influenced by southern dialects and may not necessarily be the original form of ancient Chinese. Anyway, the Sichuan dialect should have an important position, but it remains to be verified at which stage it belongs to the intermediate product of the transformation from Southwest Mandarin to modern dialects. These things were questions that my father had not even thought about when he was reading the original version of Xiaoxiaxing, and he couldn't help but feel very happy and wanted Zhou Ji to organize an article. This allowed Zhou Ji to escape the deadly calamity. At that time, Zhou Ji secretly laughed in his heart. Dad is like this, his open-minded thinking is the broadening of his horizons brought by reading, not out of his own agility. Can't I just look at the stimulating content while thinking about the fact that the Sichuan dialect is a fossil of ancient language? Cut. Thinking of these, Zhou Ji couldn't help but wear a strange smile on his face. Because he suddenly thought of something again, yes. The button that solves the problem, isn't that where we found it? In another time and space, during the summer vacation of his sophomore year in high school, Zhou Ji did one thing. He wrote an article, submitted it to Bashu Literature, and obtained publication. A work by a sophomore in high school that could be published in the most authoritative literary publication in the province caused a small sensation in the county town of Sichuan back then. Manzhou TV and Shudu Daily also conducted small news interviews at that time. In fact, in Zhou Ji's heart, he just wanted to earn some pitiful pocket money through this method. The Zhou family is not used to their children, and Zhou Ji's pocket money mostly comes from renting a table during the holidays, which is planned and dug out from the labor and material money provided by Su Xiuqin. Therefore, that manuscript fee really nourished Zhou Ji for a while. And now this article, in the Zhou Ji plan, must play a much greater role than at that time. The influence of public opinion. The current public opinion influence can only be considered as just starting compared to the click rankings of future headlines. But it doesn't mean it's not powerful. Just based on the fact that a little wind from Sichuan can spread throughout the city overnight, public opinion influence can also be used. Shudu Daily and Manzhou TV, which are at the provincial and municipal level, if operated in a timely manner and blown into the political arena of Sichuan, it is like a cyclone from the Pacific reaching the deep inland Sichuan basin. Even if only a slight impact is left, it can still bring a light rain. Moreover, with my current writing skills and mastery of materials, there is no need to be confined to just one essay. This trend can be made even bigger. The wound healed well, and 3 days later, with the approval of Uncle Xinhua's examination, Zhou Ji returned home to recuperate. Zhou Ji's home was a dormitory for a sugar and alcohol company. Before the separation of sugar, alcohol, and tobacco in 1984, the thriving sugar and alcohol company built the first 7-story residential building in Sichuan for its employees, which was considered the best house of the year. When digging the foundation, we also found a magnetic kiln filled with bottles, jars, and copper coins. The Cultural Relics Unit came to see it and said it had little value. The bottles, jars, and copper coins were all taken by the children of the sugar and wine company to play with. In 1991, this house was in a bad condition because it was tightly attached to the 3-story high wall of the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China next door, and the dormitory building below 3 floors had relatively dim lighting. Unfortunately, Dad adhered to his usual style and chose the second floor at that time. The building underwent 2 renovations, with the earliest building having a small living room and a large kitchen next to it, because there was a large stove that later generations could not believe, such as burning firewood. There are only 2 units in the building, and each unit's residents share a flue. There is a large iron pot on the stove, and a cement water tank next to it. Above the water tank is a cupboard, which is similar to the kitchen layout of Uncle Wu's rural home. There is also a large and long balcony on each floor. 2-unit families can hang clothes and do housework on the balcony while chatting. Later, natural gas was connected, and another addition was made on both sides of the building. Each family added a small kitchen and a small shower room behind the corner at the end of the balcony, as well as a large firewood stove kitchen and flue at the entrance. Of course, they didn't need it anymore. So each family dismantled it and merged the old kitchen and small living room into a larger living room. The Changyang terrace outside was also separated by wooden doors and stairs, becoming a private balcony for each family. Later on, the cement floor turned into small ceramic tiles, the walls turned into white latex, and the light bulbs turned into fluorescent tubes. The dormitory buildings, which used to be lively and bustling, became small households one by one. Zhou Ji's home covers an area of over 70 square meters, and with the addition of a kitchen and bathroom, it can be considered over 80. There are 3 bedrooms, 2 larger ones with king beds, desks, and wardrobes. My parents live in one room, while my third sister and grandmother live in one room. Zhou Ji stayed alone in the smallest room. Unlike other houses, the walls of Zhou Ji's house are similar to those of hospital wards, with white on the top and green on the bottom, except for an additional red line in the middle. Due to the inconvenience of my grandmother's legs and feet, she had to walk against the wall. Over the years, a mark left by a palm groping on the wall at the height of Hongdao would appear. There is a beautiful word in later generations. Baojiang. By using such simple decorations, this problem can be avoided by repainting every 2 years. Opening the yellow painted wooden door that sealed the balcony, Zhou Ji's mood couldn't help but sigh. When I first came back, uncles and aunties from the sugar and wine company's storefront and office in front of the dormitory all rushed over to pay attention and greet me. Although the house grew bigger and bigger later, this kind of relationship became increasingly indifferent. Uncle Yu's house downstairs plays the familiar cross-talk Tiger Mouth Escape by Zhou Ji. His daughter is from a 10,000 yuan household, and there is a sound system and vinyl records at home. The unit is U-shaped, and Mr. Yu's small courtyard and building below form a natural amplifier. When placed, you can hear it all over the building. Everyone is quite willing to listen without disturbing the public. The second floor of Zhou Ji's house was the clearest to hear, and Zhou Ji had memorized the cross-talk very well. There is a small dining table at the end of the balcony, and my grandmother is sitting there, making needlework under the rare winter sunshine in Jichuan. On the small table was a small bamboo basket, which contained balls of thread, yellow wax, awls, and various colored cloth scraps that my mother had found from her best friend Zhao Dehua's tailor shop. My grandmother will cut the scraps of cloth into suitable strips, paste them onto the paper-cut insole sample, and then sew thick and fine threads to make a pair of beautiful insoles. Every time someone comes to the house, Grandma will take out a pile of insoles and let the guests choose the ones with suitable foot sizes and take 2 pairs with them. A slightly larger piece of cloth will be used by Grandma to assemble aprons and seat cushions. The best cloth will be kept. During the Dragon Boat Festival, cotton and spices will be brought to make cloth monkeys for Zhou Ji, sachets for Sanjia, and 5 poisonous handkerchiefs. Grandma has several picture books to go from Zhou Ji, all of which are embroidered samples she drew herself, some of which are very exquisite. At the end of the balcony, which is also the end of the high wall of the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China next door, there is the best lighting, so my grandmother is doing needlework there. On the edge of that small balcony, there are also several pots of flowers and a pigeon cage placed on the wall of someone else's bank. The pigeon cage was nailed by Zhou Ji himself using wood, but it is now empty. Because Guan Tingting's family on the 4th floor later raised pigeons, their own pigeons found a higher habitat and simply landed and defected. Those pigeons were given to Guan Tingting by Zhou Ji, but there was no way to do so because those few birds had no intention of returning. Seeing his grandmother, Zhou Ji couldn't help but shed tears and burst into tears. "Grandma! I'm back." My grandmother's last few years in the Zhou Ji family were actually the most rebellious years of the second year of junior high school. Grandma comes from the countryside and follows the old rules. Before going to school when she was a child, Zhou Ji had to follow the rules and say to her, "Grandma, I'm going to school." When she came back, she would first say, "Grandma, I'm back." After high school, Zhou Ji in his second year of middle school believed that this was a futile bad habit, so he stopped this rule. My grandmother asked Zhou Ji one day, "Good grandson, have you come back now without even mentioning anything else?" Zhou Ji remembers being straightforward and resolute at the time. "Grandma. Those are all bad habits, now it's a new era, I won't talk about them long ago." "Oh, it's not good, then we won't talk about it either." Although my grandmother answered like this at that time, the disappointed expression on her face often lingered in Zhou Ji's mind in the years to come, becoming an endless regret for him. "Grandma, I'm back. Has the good grandson come back?" Grandma looked at Zhou Ji with heartache, and her response was as natural as when Zhou Ji had spoken to her in person. But this time he stood up. Don't cry, don't cry. Is it still hurting me?" Seeing Zhou Ji's current appearance, my grandmother felt a little anxious and leaned against the wall, using her once wrapped feet to gradually touch Zhou Ji's side. Zhou Ji's wound did not heal, and he couldn't take big steps either. Both of them supported the wall, and their posture was similar. This scene may seem quite comical to outsiders, but neither the grandparents nor the grandchildren noticed it. They walked towards each other step by step, holding onto the wall. "Oh, Mom, don't move." Mom thanked the unit driver who brought Zhou Ji back, carrying a basin of water bottles and the like. She was scared to see her grandparents look like this. "No one will be hurt if they fall." Quickly throwing away the things, he ran to the other end to help his grandmother and said, "Didn't he keep telling you it's okay? Look, he's coming back now. The doctors have all said that it will take a few days to recover, it's okay. We still need Dr. Zhao to come and take a look." Grandmother, with the help of her mother, sat back on the stool and said, "He came and said it's okay, that's how it's safe." Okay. Mom casually said, "Sit down first, I'll go pack my things, don't get up." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Dead Party. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Dead Party. The Zhao Tai in my grandmother's mouth is the father of my mother's best friend Zhao Baihe and Zhao Daqian, a famous doctor in the county, Zhao Shanwen. Zhao Baihe's husband, Zhang Qingping, is also his father's neighbor. He grew up and was a classmate and fellow educated youth. The ancestors of the Zhang and Zhou families both lived in a place called Zhaoling Bridge in the suburbs of the county, separated by a wooden wall as neighbors, which is a friendship of 3 generations. When Zhang Qingping was still a cement factory doctor, he was also a colleague of his mother. Her mother thought that her father's buddy was pretty good, so she introduced her best friend to him. With such a deep friendship, when my mother approached the old doctor, Dr. Zhao was particularly dedicated. Ultimately, it was a medical miracle at the time that my grandmother was able to move from being paralyzed in bed to being able to take care of herself. Grandma sat back in the chair, her eyes still inseparable from Zhou Ji. "My good grandson has lost weight. That's because you have to be thin." Mom couldn't breathe well. I just breathed a sigh of relief. "The doctor said you can start eating liquid food. Don't worry, in a few days, I'm sure we'll take your elderly parents back." Is that Director Xinhua really good or not? After watching for 3 or 4 days, obedient son can't walk anymore. Grandma was still worried and emphasized for the second time, "We still need to see Dr. Zhao." Zhou Ji just wiped away his tears, and now he can't help but want to laugh. In the grandmother's heart, Dr. Zhao is a semi-divine body of life and death, human flesh and white bones. I don't know what kind of frustration it feels like to hear this to Uncle Xinhua. But laughter would tear the wound, so Zhou Ji had to hold down the right side of his lower abdomen with one hand and quickly interrupt, "Have you finished the kimchi at home again?" The balcony sandwiched out is an old passage, and next to it is the old brick wall of Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Grandma was honest and polite. She made some small holes in the gaps between the cement bricks, nailed wooden nails, and pulled on ropes. There are many half-withered ginger seeds hanging on those ropes now. Sichuan is hot in the local area, and it's difficult in the summer. Generally, households have rice or noodles in the morning, and dry meat in the afternoon. Garlic and white meat are the main ingredients for meat, and most people eat porridge in the evening. Porridge is cooked together with dry rice at noon, and when it cools down during dinner time, it catches a cold porridge. People like to eat cold mixed water spinach, pickled vegetables, and cut some braised meat. This is the main way of life for the people of Sichuan during this period. Over the course of a summer, I consume a lot of kimchi, but my grandmother didn't learn the craft of making kimchi, while my dad and Zhou Ji learned it all. Later on, my dad was too busy, so these became matters for Zhou Ji and his grandmother. Putting cabbage, bangs, cucumbers, and other ingredients directly into the kimchi jar can cause flouring, so it is necessary to scoop out the salt water and soak it separately. Grandma is very particular about this, so every year, pickled vegetables and salt water should be prepared in advance, mainly by adding chili peppers and ginger to the old salt water, and then filling it up. There are also soaking-resistant foods such as cowpeas, knife beans, and radishes, which can be soaked first, stir-fried with water spinach stalks, stewed with sour radish and duck, or mixed with some crispy chili and eaten directly, all of which are very delicious. It is said that Duban is the soul of Sichuan cuisine, but in fact, Zhou Ji believes that soaking ginger and chili peppers is the key. "It was Tingting who helped retrieve it, and it's time to put it in the jar," said Grandma. Guan Tingting is the daughter of Guan Dabin, the branch secretary of a sugar and wine company. Her mother is Qingyi from the Sichuan opera troupe. The little girl has been petite since childhood, 3 grades younger than Zhou Ji. Zhou Ji remembers when he was in 6th grade of elementary school, he was pulled by Guan Tingting from 3rd grade to threaten and bully her male classmate. Has this girl ever helped with this? Well, thank her another day. Zhou Ji dragged a stool and slowly sat down against the wall in the sunlight, saying, "Grandma is still in good health, isn't she?" Mom brought the water bottle and basin over and stuffed them under the kitchen cement cabinet. Hearing Zhou Ji's words, she felt awkward and asked, "What's up?" "It's like we haven't seen each other for half a year." "It's been many years, not just half a year." Zhou Ji secretly complained to himself, but he was very satisfied. She took her grandmother's wrinkled hand and said, "Third sister, go home. Grandma, I will accompany you this winter vacation. You can teach me what you want to eat, and I will make it for you." Mom was a bit scared and said, "We can't do it like we did last time. Your appendicitis this time may be related to that time you ate braised pork." Xiao bai is a classic Sichuan cuisine, some of which are similar to braised pork with plum blossoms, but it uses sprouts produced in Izhou. Grandma has bad teeth and has dentures in her mouth. She likes to eat soft and sticky food. That time, when the family cut 2 pounds of meat, Zhou Ji, under the command of his grandmother, steamed a large pot of braised pork in one breath. After finishing the meal, both parents had social gatherings, so he, his third sister, grandmother, and grandchildren all ate up 2 pounds of roasted pork in one meal. When my mom came back and saw the 2 pieces of meat and sprouts left in the pot, she couldn't help but be surprised and said, "Have you finished all the meal?" In fact, Zhou Ji only took second place in that meal, third sister was third, and grandma was the first. Zhou Ji couldn't help but feel depressed. That was all a month ago, even if there were sequelae, it wouldn't last so long. Besides, Grandma ate more than me that time, no. Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by her mother with a sudden shudder. That afternoon, Zhou Ji's classmates and close friends came over. My mother went to work, and my family was injured and disabled, making it difficult to move around. In the end, Zhou Ji simply opened the balcony door and the main door, allowing visitors to enter the living room directly. There are boys and girls. The county town is so big, and most of them are classmates of the same age since elementary school. During the holiday, everyone played on the street and often wandered around, transforming from small groups to large groups. Zhou Ji's surgery was also considered a news event among classmates, and most of them felt novel and interesting. I managed to handle several trips in one afternoon on the Zhou Ji. Boys and girls will also have ambiguous feelings towards each other when they reach middle school. Zhou Ji's close friends in the city add up to 2 hazy pairs and 3 single dogs. However, the remaining 2 have their own periphery, and this one is purebred. There is also a beautiful Sichuan dialect called tubar. This word comes from lychees, and a single drop from a string of lychees is called tuabaoer. Students who have made good friends in middle school are usually a group of former desk mates who usually follow the same path to and from school, and can make plans to go home together. Zhou Ji's close friend was one of the best students in a class in junior high school. In high school, everyone was assigned to different classes, but they would also walk together when they went to school, and wait for each other after school to return home together. During the holidays, we often gather together, mainly at the Zhou Ji home, where there is a lot of delicious food and we don't have to worry about our parents' attitude. Also, there is the Fang Wenyu family. Fang Wenyu's father is the deputy minister of the Armed Forces Department, and there are calibration mirrors, bayonets, military telescopes, anti-aircraft machine gun casings, compressed biscuits, and military books for the militia at home. There is also a training ground and equipment such as barbells, stone locks, and single and parallel bars in the courtyard of the Armed Forces Department. There are quite a few fun things to do. Fang Wenyu also has the key to an empty warehouse of the Armed Forces Department in her hand. Fang's mother's family is strict, and when a girl enters the house, she follows the thief, so everyone gathers more often in the empty warehouse. Fang Wenyu has sword eyebrows and starry eyes, and is the school grass of Zhou Ji and his class. Not only is she good at studying, but she is also good at sports. Every morning at 6:30 a.m., she is called up by her father to run to the playground to practice equipment. Even if you study well, you are still handsome. Even if you're handsome, you're still covered in flesh and tendons. It's okay to wear all his flesh and tendons, and his father's military uniform. The front is fine, but the last one is simply unreasonable. With the blessing of military uniforms, Schweibe becomes even more handsome, and many girls in the grade have a good impression of Wenyu. This child has a hereditary military temperament and has been a class monitor and a member of the school team committee since childhood. In my mother's opinion, there are many children wearing military uniforms all over the city, but they are all small hooligans. Just Fang Wenyu, a serious product. This statement is actually quite accurate, because nowadays the favorite attire of urban hooligans is to wear a super wide military pants, with the bottom of the pants reaching up to the knee, commonly known as hanging crotch pants. Hanging crotch pants are tied with an armed belt, and the hem of the lower pants is neatly rolled up a few times. They should also be folded into the shape of a small leg, and the high-cut rebound white sneakers must be exposed. Fang Wenyu was also wearing hanging crotch pants, but she didn't play with the tricks of the little hooligans at the bottom of her pants. Her upper body was the cadre uniform that her father received every year, and her feet were his father's leather shoes or high-top leather boots. The soles of the boots were also reinforced with steel plates, which was a rare and serious item in these years. The temperament of the military family was well handled. Now there were only 2 pairs of 7, and Fang Wenyu stood at the edge of the sofa at home like a jade tree in the wind. He said to Zhou Ji with a commanding voice, "It's not a big deal, it's just appendicitis. It's about resting for half a month." Zhou Ji felt that this Nima Shui had a bit of a leadership cadre comforting the injured masses. Before Zhou Ji could even speak, Fang Wenyu said again, "After the final exam, everyone had a party. Unfortunately, you were not here. I wrote the chalk characters, it's so ugly. Yongmei. Bring the final exam paper to elbow, this was specially instructed by teacher Hu. Go away, go away." Zhou Ji waved impatiently and said, "Marshal Fang. If you're in such a hurry to dress up as a big carrot, then the panda has returned, right?" The handsome guy who had just entered the door smiled and said, "No. I've been pretending all the way these days." After laughing, he mocked Zhou Ji and said, "I'm fine playing as a forward. Your defender was thrown over on one side, so I have to criticize you. You're really embarrassing our second class." The speaker is Yan Xiao, who is a forward and captain of the school football team. He is clever and good at sports, and is also popular in school. However, he is somewhat slippery, and his grades in junior high school are good, but he falls sharply in high school. The first time Zhou Ji met Yan Xiao, he called him a friend of San Dian Shui. Yan Xiao couldn't understand at the time, so Zhou Ji showed him the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. Yan Xiao only then realized that there was a Sea Sand faction in the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, all of whom were Salt Lords and were referred to as Three Water Friends by the second son of the Wudang sect. From then on, Yan Xiao became a fan of martial arts, and Zhou Ji sometimes even felt that maybe his martial arts novel enlightenment had delayed this child. Yan Xiao saw fruits on the table, grabbed one and threw it to Fang Wenyu. He then grabbed another and smiled as he handed it over to the two girls who had just entered the door. "I'll settle accounts with you when you're better. Come on, let the original wife comfort me first." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Solving Problems. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Solving Problems. Two girls, one tall and the other short, had very white skin and looked more fashionable than high school students nowadays. They wore a handmade gray needle sweater on their upper body, a long yellow corduroy jacket, jeans on their lower body, and a pair of half-high heels on their feet. Looking at Zhou Ji, they smiled and said, "Big elbow, I'm back. TSK TSK TSK. Panda has become a beautiful woman." Zhou Ji smiled when he saw this beautiful woman. "I just said, what's the rush with General Fang?" Yan Xiao pretended to drool on the side and said, "That's it. If it were me, I would be in a hurry." After speaking, he got a kick from Yongmei beside him. Zhou Ji smiled and said, "It's no use being in a hurry. Everyone in grade knows that pandas are my Zhou Ji's original companion. I only sleep on the same bed in kindergarten. Oh no, I can't laugh so hard that my wound hurts." Fang Wenyu and the tall girl both blushed, and the girl gritted her teeth and spat, "You deserve it." The real name of the girl is Xiongjiao. She was chubby in elementary school and was given such an unscrupulous nickname by Zhou Ji. But Zhou Ji's words are also correct. The two were in the same class from kindergarten to junior high school. I can't help but remember what happened in kindergarten, but Zhou Ji insisted on saying that Xiongjiao wet his pillow while taking a nap in kindergarten. He spoke so vividly that the whole class thought it was true, often causing Xiongjiao to chase and beat him. Fang Wenyu has a good impression of Xiongjiao, but her face is incomparable to Yan Xiao and Zhou Ji. She is tender and playful, so Zhou Ji and Yan Xiao often use this as a joke in front of the two of them. Xiongjiao went to Izhou to study medicine in the middle school entrance examination, studying pharmacology because both of her parents are from pharmaceutical companies. After half a year of studying in a vocational school, Xiongjiao has now become more dignified. "Can you really do it, elbow? The letter said we would go to Fubao town to play together this holiday. How has it changed now?" Fubao Town is an ancient village located on the edge of a primitive forest in Sichuan County, with beautiful scenery. Further into the mountains, there is also a fairly large forest farm. There were classmates in high school, and Zhou Ji had already made an agreement with them, but now it seems like time is running out. After all, it's almost always necessary to stay at home from the Spring Festival to the 15th, only before the holiday. Zhou Ji showed a regretful expression and said, "There's nothing we can do. How about changing to Baisha Town? 3 days back and forth, there's a Baizhai mountain over there. It used to be a bandit's den. Well, it must be nice to go and see the terrain." Fang Wenyu immediately agreed. Pure excuse. Yan Xiao inserted a horizontal bar to sabotage. "I'm afraid my eyes won't be able to see the terrain by then." The little girl who just kicked Yan Xiao saw that everyone was getting into a lot of trouble. She smiled and took out a stack of test papers from her bag, saying, "Elbow, this is the paper for this final exam. Teacher who specifically asked to bring it to you. Miss who would rather kill 3,000 by mistake than let one go." Zhou Ji couldn't help but sigh as she watched the thick stack of oil paper being pushed and turned into scrolls of paper. This is He Yong Mei, who lives very close to Xiong Jiao. They have been best friends since childhood. Among Zhou Ji's close allies, the only ones who truly formed a couple were He Yong Mei and Yan Xiao. He Yong Mei is petite, with naturally curled short hair and a high forehead, which is the intelligent feature that Su Dongpa once praised. This is the old study committee member in the class, who has been crushing Zhou Ji for a long time from the first grade of elementary school to the third grade of junior high school, until he went to the fourth class in high school and continued to crush others. Due to her status as a university seed athlete, He Yong Mei is the darling of all teachers in her grade. She can really do whatever she wants if she studies well. Therefore, the teachers were strict in their guard against Yan Xiao and had several conversations with him, both inside and outside of which were not to delay his classmate Yongmei. Although He Yongmei is from class 4, Hu Xuemei would rather have her bring her a roll of paper than hand it over to Yan Xiao, who is in the same class as her. This discrimination is not uncommon. It's shocking to have to find someone who is good at studying to send a roll of paper. Yan Xiao was indignant when he said this. "I haven't heard of any books that little soldier Zhang Jie has read. Isn't it the same as sending a chicken feather letter? The person delivering the chicken feather letter is Haiwa, not Xiaobing Zhangga." Zhou Ji immediately corrected, "Haiwa is the winner of the 9th Edinburgh International Film Festival and the first children's film in China to win an international award. Can we all fit this special for you?" Yan Xiao looked at Zhou Ji like a monster and said, "Do you still want anyone to live?" He Yong Mei has become accustomed to the various cold knowledge that Zhou Ji Buting has revealed, but for her, anything unrelated to the college entrance examination will be automatically blocked. Hand over the paper to Zhou Ji and say, "Task completed." Zhou Ji flipped over and said, "Hey, this English exam is not difficult." "Not difficult." He Yong Mei was speechless. "You didn't even look carefully, did you?" Zhou Ji only realized that this was the first year of high school in 1991. "I have a solid foundation in learning English in college. I have even finished reading the original version of Gone with the Wind, and have been developing programs since work. Then, I have finished reading Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings, but I have never lost sight of them. And now, the worst child in the county is English. In Sichuan County, except for the young and beautiful English teacher He Xiu, who was recently separated, everyone else spoke a strong Sichuan accent. Tikhel asked me to make an egg, pick up the booker and come to read. I said Tikhel. I can't plead. This is a short joke about learning English at Sichuan Middle School at that time." Quickly smiling, he flipped through the pages again and said, "Taking back what I just said, I didn't look carefully, but it's actually quite difficult." He Yong Mei pulled out the Chinese language paper again and frowned, saying, "Where can I summon souls for this question? Vanilla still grows in 3 households. Back then, when I was on the wall, the Xiang River should have known the 9-song heart. I made a mistake in this question, why wasn't it Xiangyu? Zhou Ji looked at the answer options, which were Jia Yi, Xiangyu, Chu Yuan, and Song Yu, and couldn't help but say, wow, this question is a bit tough. Although there were 3 households in Chu, if Qin were to perish, it would be Chu. This must mean that a Chu person, Xiangyu, ultimately destroyed Qin. Shouldn't it be him? He Yongmei asked. I can't blame you for this question, it's a bit out of line, Zhou Ji said. It's true that Sanhudi refers to the state of Chu, but the people in the answer have all had profound relationships with the ancient Chu region, so this question is difficult. All of them are extracurricular things. Vanilla is a self-comparison of Chu Yuan in Li Sa, and the second couplet, 9 songs, is also a work of Chu Yuan. Therefore, this couplet refers to Chu Yuan. I knew I couldn't pass you on this question, actually, He Yongmei already knew the answer to this question and smiled. This question also has its pitfalls for me, Zhou Ji couldn't help but laugh and cry. In the teaching materials, summoning souls is said to be from Chu Yuan, but if I read more extensively, I would know that there is actually another saying, this one, Song Yu. Pointing his finger to Song Yu's choice, he said, moreover, ancient Chu believed in witchcraft, soul summoning, and herbs, which may only be related to rituals. So for me, the only clue left for this question is, 9 songs, and Ha Bai. The person who set this question is simply not at ease. This is a trap for those who only read textbooks and teaching aids, and also for those who read more extracurricular books. I still haven't hit your big elbow. He Yongmei has always admired Zhou Ji's level of ancient literature. You can still see where the question setter dug the pit, it's really impressive. After speaking, he pointed to the word Hebe, and said, you know this elbow. Even teacher Su Yoji from class 1 can't explain it clearly. Knowing 9 songs actually means the answer has already come out. There's no need to know this anymore, Zhou Ji said. But if you know this, then this question will definitely not be wrong. Because this allusion comes from Wang Yi's preface to Tianwen, it is said that when Chu Yuan wrote the article, Tianwen, he asked because of the wall of the book. There is a book on my bookshelf called Annotations to the Chapters and Sentences of Chu Ci, which is a bound version of the 2 books he wrote. Go and bring it, and I will flip through it for you to see. He Yongmei was very familiar with Zhou Ji's family and ran into his bedroom to find this book. Zhou Ji flipped over to the page of Preface to Tianwen and said, here. Wow. Really? He Yongmei was both surprised and delighted. You're great with your elbow. Bah. I've installed it for him again. Yan Xiao expressed disdain. This is really too obscure. The purpose of the question setter is to make it clear that everyone relies on guessing to solve this problem. Zhou Ji shook his head and said, so the allusion of Hebe itself is invalid information in this question, and we cannot use it as a breakthrough point for solving the problem. Besides you, a monster in ancient Chinese literature, He Yongmei smiled and said, elbow, can I borrow this book? Don't read it, Zhou Ji said. It's a waste of time and energy. You don't need to know so much about the exam results. I know, I'm going to show it to Teacher Su, He Yongmei said happily. You're in class 4. Zhou Ji waved his hand again and said, forget it, I didn't say anything, it's up to you. In the minds of the teachers, no one treats He Yongmei as class 4, and the little girl has already crossed the class limit. He Yongmei is from Zhechuan County. Learning well means being able to do whatever you want. At this time, in the Chinese language exam, ancient texts accounted for 50.6 points, which was very frustrating for many students. But Zhou Ji can basically not lose a single point, and even see through the ideas and traps set by the question setter. This is actually at the level of being a teacher and a question setter, but only limited to this subject. Compared to He Yongmei, who excels in all subjects, Zhou Ji in his past life often felt inferior. After growing up with mature thinking, Zhou Ji realized that this was a difference in learning methods. The learning method of He Yong-mei, aimed at preparing for the college entrance examination, lacks comprehensive quality training. The learning method entrusted to him by his fourth cousin is the correct one. He has a wide range of hobbies and knowledge, and has outstanding advantages in certain areas of interest. He will continue to self-study and enrich himself in the future. The things learned in this way can benefit oneself for a lifetime. Suddenly, a question came to mind. Hey, are you here to see a patient or ask a question? He Yong-mei perfunctorily said, the doctor is treating the patient. You should get better early, elbow. Everyone is still waiting for you to treat us. Why? What's the reason? Celebrating getting a knife. Do you still need a reason to treat? Zhou Ji thought for a moment and said, isn't Xueshan back yet? Let's wait a little longer. There are 7 close allies, and Zhao Zhonggang, who serves in the Shu City Fire Brigade, will definitely not be able to return. Feng Xueshan, who is studying at the Manzhou Hydropower School, will also have a few more days. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Dad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Dad. After the close allies left, Zhou Ji began the final proofreading of his articles. In the past, submitting articles was just a temporary game, but now it has become more serious, and the article has been changed from 1 to 2. It will be reviewed soon, and now it is time to submit them. After explaining to his grandmother, Zhou Ji left the house. The small county town in 1991 has become quite vibrant, with all the old Shishiatsu roads replaced by cement roads. Although the urban area has not yet expanded, buildings are being built everywhere in the city. The small county town is sandwiched between the inlet of the Hongshui River and the Yangtze River. The Hongshui River twists and turns from the southwest under the Anil Mountain, and finally joins the Yangtze River, creating a triangular area. At the confluence of the two rivers, there is a large stone beach mainly composed of sand and stones. The beach is flooded every year, causing various ditches and voids to be washed away. After the water recedes, it will accumulate rainwater, and water turtles, tadpoles, small fish and shrimp, as well as a type of aquatic beetle called water turtles, will grow in the water. It is a popular place for children in the county town to play. There are roughly 3 roads in the county, one of which is the Shirban Old Road in Xinhua town, which has been used since ancient times. It runs along the wooden and small brick buildings by the river, from the Chishui River Wharf to Zhaoling Bridge. That road is Zhou Ji's favorite memory of the old city, with ancient and elegant streets on both sides. Except for a few blue brick buildings, the rest are separated by wooden boards. In the morning, when the door panels facing the street are removed, there are small shops, restaurants, and tea houses one by one. After each section, there will be a big banyan tree or an old osmanthus tree on the roadside, surrounded by a stone railing under the tree, which is also a place for residents to rest and chat. When meeting, many villagers will also sit there, placing their baskets or vegetable picks in front. Some small courtyards are also located on that road, which were former mansions of wealthy families that were later distributed to several families. Many of those small courtyards are very exquisite, with carved windows, carved stone foundations, painted pillars and beams, and some courtyards even have a large stone water tank. On the edge of the water tank, there are many curved indentations that were made by people living in small courtyards who used the water tank as a grinding stone over several decades. Later, with the development of the small town, a new road was built behind the wooden buildings on the side away from the Yangtze River, forming larger residential areas on both sides of the road. Xinhua town became Zhechuan County. That road was originally made of stone, and later it was made of cement. The main road still starts from the Chishui River Pier and continues until Zhaoling Bridge. In the middle section of the road, next to the old site of the Industrial and Commercial Bureau, another road leading to the south has been built, connecting the bus station and ferry pier. That section of road is called the New Highway, which is a hub connecting the water and land routes in Sichuan County. Yang He's family is in Baimi Township across the river, and every time he comes home, he has to take a ferry on the new highway. Later on, the new highway continued southward and eventually reached Gome Mountain in the suburbs. It then wrapped around the county town and connected the Qishui River Wharf and the new highway wharf again, forming a circular line. Taking this ring road as a distinguishing feature, from the Qishui River Wharf to the new highway wharf, the urban construction within the ring road has undergone rapid changes, forming a relatively modern new city. The section from the new highway to Zhaoling Bridge still maintains its original ancient style, appearing to be declining and dilapidated. The people of Sichuan distinguish the flow of the Yangtze River and refer to the first section of Xincheng as Xiaguan Town and the upper section as Shangguan Town. In fact, in the true administrative division, Shangguan and Xiaguan are both a district, Qingguan District. The post office that Zhouji is going to is right across from the old site of the new highway administration for industry and commerce. Speaking of which, it feels like the place is bustling, but in fact, at a normal walking speed, it only takes about 10 minutes. So Sichuan County is now a small sparrow with all 5 organs, and when it comes to the actual core area, it is not as large as a large-scale university. There is currently no taxi in the county, and Zhouji's wound has not recovered. He raised his hand and called for a 3-wheeled taxi. I heard that going to the post office, the 3-wheeled master is a bit strange. How lazy is this kid? In just a few minutes and 1 yuan, Zhouji arrived at the entrance of the post office. The 2 articles are also quite thick. I asked the staff at the post office and bought a large envelope and urgent stamps from them. I wrote the address on one side of the counter, pasted the stamp with paste, sealed the envelope, and threw it into the green mailbox next to it. Coming out of the post office, it was almost time for the office to finish work. Zhou Ji saw several people wearing business uniforms, accompanied by his father wearing woolen coats, coming out of the old business office and now the Qingguan Town business office. Zhou Ji waved his hand towards that side, and the director Lu Changjing noticed and reminded his father. Dad hurriedly explained a few words to Lu Changjing and walked over with a big leather bag in his hand. Zhou Ji, why did you come here? Didn't Uncle Xinhua let you rest at home? Uncle Xinhua also said to walk more to avoid intestinal adhesion, so I came out for a walk. My current father is really young and strong, with thick black hair on his head and a refined temperament on his body. Dad is still wearing a Zhongshan suit, with a pen pinned to his chest pocket and a long woolen coat draped over it. The material for that coat was still sent by my cousin who worked at the Yuzhou woolen mill. When there was a shortage of color televisions in Yuzhou, I went to my dad's place and he got a ticket for a 21-inch Panda color TV in the county. My cousin happily took a boat from Yuzhou to carry the color TV and also gave away many fabrics from the factory. My cousin works as a worker in a woolen factory and is also a tailor in his spare time. He even taught Zhao Daqian how to make suits, which happened several years ago. The woolen coat on my dad's body is still Zhao Dehua's craftsmanship from the past, with a suit collar, and now it looks very well fitted and handsome. Dad looked up and down at Zhou Ji before saying, well, then let's call a 3-wheeled trip back. After the father and son had 3 rounds, the father said, it's convenient now. Do you know my pager number? I don't know, then please remember. Father reported a few numbers. Remember to remind your mother and call me in a timely manner when encountering such situations in the future. In this era, pagers are still a novelty, and they are only equipped at or above the bureau level in the county. They are still digital, so it takes over 1,000 units. In his past life, Zhou Ji was still a heartless person at this time, but now he secretly sighed. It seems that this career crisis has dealt a significant blow to his father. Dad never told Zhou Ji about the pager number before because he believed it was for his work and had nothing to do with personal matters at home. Now, this is actually better, indicating that Dad's thinking has begun to change and he is somewhat transparent. However, Zhou Ji couldn't console himself and only repeated the pager number. Remember. Just remember. Dad began to care about Zhou Ji's surgery again. Is the wound okay? Did it hurt at that time? No pain, I was still asleep on the operating table. I was only woken up after the surgery was completed, and then continued to sleep on the hospital bed. That's okay, Dad nodded. But after all, I missed a few days of studying, so I still need to make up for it as soon as possible. Zhou Ji looked at his father in surprise. I know you have emotions about your mother's decision, my father patiently explained, but after all, times have changed, and what the country urgently needs now are talents with a background in science and engineering, as well as research talents. Of course, these don't mean that your father is going to sing high-pitched, said the father. This indicates that in the coming years, your career direction will be towards science, which obviously has a broader future than humanities. Besides, your science is not bad either, and even if you work hard, there won't be any problems. Originally, I wanted to wait for your final exam to see if there were any fluctuations in your grades before telling you about this, but now I can't grasp the situation. Dad, actually. From the bottom of your heart, you want me to study humanities, right? Dad was taken aback for a moment. This brat from our family was stabbed, why does it seem like there has been some change in his thinking? When you were a child, you cultivated my hobbies and asked me to learn Chinese culture and calligraphy from my fourth cousin. You also asked my godfather to guide me. Zhou Ji asked, actually, in your heart, you want me to study humanities, right? But after studying humanities, it's really difficult to find a job outside. It's not easy to enter the public security, procuratorial, and legal systems, so only the education system. What else is there? What has become of teachers' salary arrears now? Feeling that what he said was a bit inappropriate, Dad quickly explained, last time you couldn't remember the political exam. Dad gave you half a day of extra classes and you could get 90. What does that mean? Isn't this indicating that I am smart and can learn humanities quickly? Zhou Ji asked. You're wrong, Dad shook his head. This just shows the substitutability of humanities. What does it mean? Don't think you're just smart, Dad continued with a serious heart. If you choose humanities, even if you enter college, what you learn in 4 years may be just like when you took the political exam. You can be caught up with and surpassed by others in a short period of time. This is detrimental to your future. Unless you can further your professional education to a certain level that cannot be replaced. That must be a master's or doctoral degree. But science is different. National construction requires science talents at all levels. From researching supercomputers and colliders, to manufacturing bicycles in factories, building roads and houses in counties. We need them everywhere, we need them everywhere. Even if you don't reach a high professional level, you can still find a suitable job position for yourself. This is called the demand gap. The gap in humanities is very narrow, while the gap in science is very broad. What if I go to an irreplaceable level like you said, Dad? Son, you're a bit ambitious now, my father said patiently. We still need to start from reality, from our own achievements, and consider everything comprehensively. Your Chinese grades are still good now, and the rest can only be considered as above average, which is almost equivalent to a bachelor's degree. We don't care about the language and mathematics that we all need to test. Your grades are still very average in the fields of humanities, politics, history, and geography, as well as science and chemistry. That is to say, with your current grades, you can take either humanities or science. But considering the future employment gap, choosing a science major is undoubtedly more beneficial for your future employment, given that you don't have any specific majors at this stage. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Old Horse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Old Horse. Dad is like this, presenting facts and reasoning. If you want to persuade him, you have to come up with your reasons and reasoning. If your reasons and reasoning are better than him, he will follow suit, such as obtaining immunity from nap by reciting poetry, but if your reasons and reasoning itself are nonsense, then I'm sorry. But now Zhou Ji really can't come up with any facts or reasons to convince his father. Never mind, before the time came, Zhou Ji could only nod and say, I understand. Once you understand, that's good. Dad breathed a sigh of relief, but immediately said again, but even if you're in different classes, you can't lose the things that Uncle Four and Godfather taught you. It's good for you for life, okay? A tricycle passed by the north gate, and an elderly shout came from a small shop. Mr. Zhou, please stay. Zhou Ji suddenly remembered something. Dad, please wait for me. I have 2 things to pick up. Dad stopped the car and simply followed along, saying, it's not appropriate to ask the master to wait, they're still working. After paying the fare, Dad turned around and asked Zhou Ji, what do you want to take? The north gate used to be the largest dock in Liajiaquan, but it has now been replaced by a larger new highway dock. At the current north gate, on the slope facing the river, is the bamboo and wood grain market transformed from the previous river fresh market. Across the road is Zhangjiagu, now the largest new market in Jichuan. Zhou Ji brought his father to a bamboo shop. There is an old shopkeeper in the bamboo shop who sells fishing gear made of bamboo. In Zhou Ji's impression, this fishing gear shop disappeared with the passing of the old shopkeeper in a few years, but in another 20 years, the price of such intangible cultural heritage handmade products was staggering. The old man's skills are quite impressive, but in this era, they are both bright and dark because bamboo has its limitations. Old Ma, have I finished what I want? Zhou Ji's attitude now is exactly the same as that of a second-year junior who doesn't understand anything but thinks he can do anything. He came here 6 months ago to order things. Old Ma ignored Zhou Ji and stood up. He took a long cloth bag from the counter and handed it directly to his father, saying, both things are ready, sir. Please take a look. Dad, with a bewildered expression on his face, took 2 bags and opened them. One bag contained 2 sticks, and the other bag contained a stick. What is this? Zhou Ji connected the 2 sticks together, opened the plug at the bottom, and pulled out 2 more sticks from inside, splicing them together to create a lacquered crystal-clear fishing rod. After shaking twice to test his waist strength and toughness, Zhou Ji felt very satisfied and carefully took them off and put them away. Another purple bamboo joint was shaken out from another bag, and both ends of the bamboo joint were sealed with white copper. Then, the 2 components poured out of the bag were rolled onto the white copper plug, but it was a purple bamboo stick with bamboo root tips everywhere. Unlike the thicker crutches nowadays, this crutch uses purple bamboo, which is delicate and lightweight. Both items are very exquisite and look a bit different from the other items in the store. What is this? Gifts. One is a fishing rod for Aunt Jingqing's 3rd aunt, and the other is a cane for Uncle Yao, more precisely, called a one-ming cane. They were all prepared for the elders, so my dad couldn't say anything and asked Old Ma, how much is it? Chenghui 80. Old Ma felt that he had shown the blind all his flirtatious looks, and his attitude was a bit bad. How much? Dad was startled and said, you're from bamboo. You can make 2 big beds at 80, right? This is custom made by your young master, using Bai Li and Zi Li. Just the fish roe ground is full of purple jade and bamboo roots, or if your young master calls it famous, I won't let it go. That's a treasure that has been collected for decades. What? Dad feels like it's just too much nonsense. This is deceiving consumers and deceiving the Director of Industry and Commerce. It's not expensive, it's not expensive. Zhou Ji quickly reconciled, Dad, don't underestimate these 2 things. These are the skills that Ma Yi doesn't show off. At least he has passed 16 levels of light, paint, and water. Otherwise, he can create an amber light effect. What have you seen with amber? Dad glared at Zhou Ji. 19 ways. Old Ma still said coldly, it took me more than half a year to push the light alone. I thought you knew this, sir, but it wasn't as good as your noble son. It's really worth this price. Zhou Ji said, if we need to prepare something for our elders, wouldn't it be better? I'm planning to have my cousin from Jingqing make a wheelchair for my grandmother, and I won't use a fishing rod to bribe Uncle San. At that time, Aunt San was still the director of the Jingqing Labor Bureau, and Aunt San was the director of the police station in the third living area of Jingqing Dongfang Electric Machinery Factory. According to reason, arranging a job was easy, but her cousin Su Anren was actually a worker in the motor factory's auto repair workshop. Zhou Ji has countless cousins, several of whom are his idols. Su Anren is not very good at learning, but he is very proficient in the mechanical field. After working, he invented countless things and even applied for several national patents. What kind of motorcycle anti-theft alarm, park iron rocking chairs, bicycle steel wire locks? The most powerful one is undoubtedly the most common type of anti-theft door lock in later generations. That kind of door lock key has flat sides and a groove in the middle, with the key teeth on the groove. The things on the rotten streets of later generations were definitely inventions that could amaze people at that time, which were crafted by cousin Enron. In another time and space, Su Anren guarded his invention for more than 10 years without any manufacturers willing to cooperate. In the end, in a fit of anger, he decided not to pay the annual protection fee of over 100 yuan. In the second year after the expiration of patent protection, the world is filled with anti-theft doors with locks, and manufacturers have long been waiting for this moment. And my cousin, besides being stunned, didn't even get a penny. Years later, my cousin would still mock himself at the dinner table, saying that he had told others before that the kind of door lock was his invention, which led to a burst of ridicule. Are you Su Anren? I don't know if this patent has been developed yet. But there is no doubt that Anren's cousin is clever and skillful. It's not a big deal to use the machine tools in the workshop and some waste materials to build a wheelchair for his grandmother. Upon hearing Zhou Ji's words, my father didn't want to linger here anymore. He painfully opened his wallet, took it out, and counted out 80 yuan to put on the counter. Zhou Ji happily put away his things and said, "Thank you, old horse. In the future." "No, there won't be any future." Old Ma politely collected the money, his eyelids too lazy to lift. "Young master, it's better not to come in the future. The small shop can't afford to entertain you." Zhou Ji and his father walked out of the small shop one by one. His father couldn't help but look back at the shop and said, "This teacher, Fu Guli, is strange." Zhou Ji smiled and said, "As experts, it's just like that. His nickname is also strange." Dad said, referring to the old horse as Mr. Zhou Ji, and young master. There is no such thing as saying in these years. That's the rule of Liajiaquan Port, Zhou Ji explained. The kind before the liberation. Oh, Dad finally understood and looked at the 2 cloth bags in Zhou Ji's hand. This must be over 30 pounds of meat, a month's salary. Forget it, it's rare that you have the heart. Everything is for your elders, so spend some money. But this year, you ran out of lucky money. Returning home, my mother has also returned and is cleaning the house. As the Chinese New Year approaches, there is a shortage of strong laborers at home, which makes my mother a bit restless. No doubt, the big boy from the city family is also useful. For example, I have to go to the grain station every month to carry rice and buy oil, for example, cooking pickled Chinese cabbage and mustard tuber at home, or carrying a bucket to make tofu pudding in glutinous rice, and then taking the milk back. Grandma talked about it when she had dinner. At the end of the year, she would make rice dumpling and noodles, which was the biggest event in her heart every year. A few days later, "It's okay," Zhou Ji said. "When the foreign monk arrives, let him help with it." "The monk is good," Grandma nodded. "He is even more capable than a good grandson." Zhou Ji finished 2 mouthfuls of boiled liquid food congee with yellow hot ding soup prepared for him by his grandmother. I'll go to my aunt's house to have a look. That's it. Mom said, you go to grandma's house and choose a few suitable gifts. My grandmother is from the Su family's youngest house in Gujing Township. As the saying goes, the youngest house gives birth to elders. Anyone from Jichuan County, Shuangxi Town, Hongshui County, or the Su family in Gujing Township who passes by Jichuan must come and take a look. Therefore, Zhou Ji's family is constantly visited by guests, and there are many gifts piled up in his grandmother's room, which are not very useful. Zhou Ji picked out a box of dim sum and took 4 bags of sugar. Mom, do you think it's almost like this? Mom reduced the sugar into 2 bags and said, foolish child, your aunt will return the gift in a few days. Giving so much is not good. Okay. Zhou Ji looked at the things in his hand and said, now the hen has become an old duck. Mom smiled and patted Zhou Ji, saying, take 3 rounds back and forth. Hurry up and come back early. Just let her see if you're okay. The tricycle passed through the new highway, crossed the flowing ditch, and finally stopped at the entrance of a small alley at Zhaoling Bridge. Next to the alley is a large foul-smelling ditch, pouring domestic sewage into the Yangtze River. Winter is fine now, but in summer, the smell of this ditch is actually quite strong. Walk down the alley for a while, and next to it are houses with green tiles. You can see the riverside here, turn back here, pass a big Chinese tallow tree, and then come onto the old road along the Jichuan riverside. There is a large courtyard next to the Chinese tallow tree, but now in addition to the surrounding houses, the middle of the courtyard is also piled with honeycomb coal, chicken coops, and the remaining pieces of land are also planted with small onions, lettuce, etc., making it very crowded. Walk along the wall and door to the left end of the yard, where there are 2 small houses, which are my aunt's houses. This house is still rented. The door was not locked, and Zhou Ji pushed open the wooden door. Inside was a small apartment with 2 rooms and 1 entrance. The house is very tidy, and compared to the noisy and dirty environment outside, it can be described as spotless. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Auntie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Auntie, Auntie, Auntie. Zhou Ji tried to shout twice. Someone behind him said, here, I was just watching TV at your Lu's house. Zhou Ji turned his head and saw the thin and frail figure. Auntie. Lu Yan, he waved to a chubby aunt standing at the opposite door. Zhou Ji is here. The chubby aunt smiled and said, I heard from your aunt that you were hospitalized and underwent surgery. Is this discharge? It's okay, Zhou Ji smiled and said, if we don't come out, let's first report our aunt's safety. That should be it. Lu Yan smiled and said, you don't know what I've been through these past few days. My ears are all ringing with calluses. Ha ha, it's good to see you. Thank you, Lu Yan, for your concern. Auntie pulled open the light in her small house and said, hey Bao, come in quickly. Zhou Ji walked into the cabin with a black line on his head and said, Auntie, can we change this title? Can we stop calling it that way in the future? Auntie sat by the bed and looked at Zhou Ji sitting on the white willow vine chair. I heard your mother say she's hospitalized, which scared me a lot. She even said she'll go see her in the next few days. She said, where's my cousin? I don't know which fox and dog party he is with. Oh. Auntie is a hard-working person. When Zhou Ji's grandparents passed away, she was only 15 years old at the time. Dad was only 5 years old at that time. The street saw that this family was really pitiful, so they arranged for their aunt to work as a worker in the county's spinning factory, and thus pulled their father up. I heard my aunt had a childhood sweetheart, but due to my father's burden, she didn't succeed in the end. My aunt didn't get married until very late and had a child named He Daong. However, a few years later, my uncle contracted tuberculosis again and soon left. He Daong has been a small hooligan since childhood, and he is generous in his actions. His father thought of many ways before sending He Daong to the county water plant. There were many young people in the water plant, so even if this cousin was looking for his own side of the world, he would hang out all day and never come back to live since he entered the factory. The old Zhou family is different from the old mother's big family in Gujing Township. According to her aunt, her grandfather is Danding, who sells small rice dumpling and dandan noodles, but she starved to death. When she arrived here, she was also a lone father. But when it came to Zhou Ji himself, he was still a single child, and then he welcomed the national family planning policy. As a result, Zhou Ji became a three-generation single biography, and there was a strong trend of continuing the tradition. In the mouth of his aunt, Zhou Ji became a family heirloom. Speaking of this aunt, she gritted her teeth and said, "It's all your uncle's fault. If it weren't for him, you would have had a younger brother." Zhou Ji said, "I've prepared my uncle's cane and even said I'll bring it to him in 2 days. This unlucky old thing." Auntie angrily said, "What are you looking at him for? Just let him die in Manzhou." Zhou Ji couldn't help but smile bitterly, as this was once again a grudge between the older generation and Chenguzi. The moldy old thing, in my aunt's mouth is actually a prominent figure from the Su family, the old secretary of Jichuan County. Su Xiaobang. When Su Xiaobang was a secretary, he did many great things for Jichuan. The first project was the construction of the first cross river bridge in Jichuan County, the Hongshui River Bridge. This bridge was very high according to the construction standards at that time. During the dry season, the piers were more than 10 meters away from the river surface, with double arch support and 2-way lanes, connecting Jichuan County and Majie Town across the Hongshui River, as well as Rongshan Town, which is more than 10 miles downstream of the Yangtze River, below Majie Town. This measure was ahead of its time, connecting the two major towns separated by the Hongshui River, equivalent to expanding a riverside economic belt for Jichuan County. This also created great favorable conditions for the landing of a national-level project at that time. The Sichuan Provincial Natural Gas Chemical Plant in Jichuan. The boosting effect brought by the chemical plant to Rongshan Town and Jichuan County was immediate in that era. The eldest daughter, who works as a teacher at the Central Primary School in Rongshan Town, is a worker in the power supply class of a chemical factory. After completing the first task, Uncle Yao did the second big thing, driving the entire county and towns to raise pigs. At that time, the country did not allow private pigs to be raised, so my uncle established a collective pig farm. The first thing to do when going to a township, whether it's for a meeting or business, is to directly take the county committee member Xiao Jipu to the pig farm and inspect it first. At that time, Sichuan province was the largest grain and pig-producing province in the country, and Jichuan was also made the top pig-producing county in Sichuan by my uncle. After the third plenary session, more than 180 counties across the country sent delegations to Jichuan to inspect the pig farming industry. At that time, my father was also at the county finance committee and received many visitors. Later on, whenever I talked about this, my dad would say that these delegations came to eat a bite of pork. At that time, only the guest house in Jichuan County could afford a grand feast. But Uncle Yao also has his flaws, which are a rough work style, being arbitrary and domineering, and being able to curse people severely. When the family planning policy came out, my mother had already been pregnant for a few months, but in terms of policy, it was possible to give birth. Uncle Yao felt that someone would poke him in the spine, so he worked for his mother and father and asked them to wear this head. In the end, this child did not stay, and the reason why my aunt hates my uncle is here. This old man wants to cut off the roots of my old Zhou family, and he has been harboring deep resentment ever since. Even though my younger uncle is now a deputy high-ranking official in Manzhou City, in my aunt's mouth, he is still the old unlucky guy. Now that Zhou Ji is at his aunt's home court, he can only follow Mao's example and together condemn his uncle, saying, "That's right, isn't all the senior officials like this?" Not to mention that our family doesn't get enough light, we have to suffer a lot from him. After finishing speaking, quickly shift the topic. Don't talk about him anymore. Has our family been making pickled vegetables recently? Why does it smell like pickled vegetables? The heirloom's nose is really sharp, so I helped Aunt Lou make 70.80 pounds for you. Auntie's skill in making side dishes can be said to be unparalleled in Sichuan. Anyway, since Auntie left, Zhou Ji has never had such a delicious side dish again. These dishes are mainly the food on the table of Sichuan people. Sweet garlic, Chinese onion, bath pickles, salt cabbage, lobster sauce, red tofu, pickled mustard, pickled Chinese cabbage. In this small courtyard, as long as my aunt's kimchi jar opens, it will be filled with fragrance. Later on, the people in the courtyard were too lazy to do it themselves and couldn't get rid of that person. Why don't you just ask Saturdays to help take care of it? You can tell from the way Auntie was addressed among the people around her how difficult it was for the old Zhou family to have a large population in the past. Grandpa, mother, and cubs are all 8, and in the end, only Auntie and Dad are left. Actually, with your skills, Auntie, you can consider charging a fee. How about that? It makes people laugh. Auntie, have you ever considered opening a small stall? It's just selling sweet garlic, red tofu, and so on. Zhou Ji continued to induce, I see none of those stalls in the Zhangjiagu market that can match your taste, but they also make a lot of money. If you think it's okay, I'll go talk to Dad. No, 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 no. The aunt waved her hands repeatedly. Isn't it okay for me to be like this now? Now my aunt is responsible for sending and receiving at the entrance of Xinhua bookstore, while also selling newspapers. In fact, she is just a gatekeeper, not in charge of organization, and her income is meager. But in my aunt's heart, it's a serious and prestigious job. There is also discrimination against small business owners, claiming that they are responsible for selling food. The first time I heard this word, Zhou Ji consulted his fourth cousin, who explained the first 2 words and said that the so-called called negative sales of domestic workers, to seek the winner of the day and night, refers to urban small businesses. The last 2 words are actually fabricated, referring to running around to make a living and not returning home to eat. Also ask who said this to Zhou Ji. Zhou Ji felt funny. His ancestors sold rice dumpling dandan noodles and starved to death. When he was a child, Zhou Ji asked his father this question. What he didn't eat could eat rice dumpling and dandan noodles at home. Why did he starve to death? Speaking of which, the Lao Zhou family is the standard negative vendor who sells food. But at the same time, it's funny, but at the same time, it's also a secret surprise and heartache for my aunt's hidden cultural level. The ancestors of the Zhou family don't seem like someone who can create such words. The thoughts of the older generation were deeply ingrained, and Zhou Ji couldn't change them either. He had to chat a few more words before saying goodbye. When I got home, my father was watching the county news broadcast, and the voice of the announcer came out. Today, the leaders of the city's natural gas company, Mr. and Mr., came to inspect Sichuan County's natural gas company. Secretary Hua Yuliang accompanied them and issued important instructions, requiring that during the Spring Festival, the natural gas company must use gas for residents' daily lives, so that all residents in the county can celebrate a stable and peaceful Spring Festival. Inside the 21-inch Panda Color TV, behind the leaders of Hua Yuliang and the Municipal Power Company, there is also a beautiful lady who looks different from everyone else when dressed up. That is Zhang Fangyu, the manager of the county natural gas company. Zhou Ji glanced at the TV and said, Dad, Mom, I want to go to Manzhou tomorrow. Isn't the monk coming home? Mom walked a yarn stick and needle in her hand, looking at the TV. The guests have come, the master has run away, leaving them alone at home. It's only 1 or 2 days, Zhou Ji said. When should the monk go home and not make a bed? He won't be able to come in 3 or 2 days. You still have a wound. Isn't this a cane for Uncle Yao? Zhou Ji smiled and said, I want to send it to him before the holiday. Why don't you just ask someone to take it? Mom said, then threatened Zhou Ji, also, next time you do this, let your family know first, otherwise you will be careful. It's not a big deal to deduct from the New Year's Eve money, Zhou Ji quickly said. His father had a kind face and a dark heart. In the afternoon, it was windy, but he had a hidden intention of using this matter to get all of his New Year's Eve money. He had to take this opportunity to fight for it for himself. That's what you said. Mom was very satisfied with the effectiveness of her threat. Zhou Ji saw his father secretly sighing beside him. That's something I've worked hard to create, and it's not worth saving face for you. Zhou Ji smiled and said, so I have to personally deliver it. Dad stared at the TV and said, when your youngest uncle worked in Zhechuan, he often relied on walking in the countryside, and his knees were a problem at that time. But he hasn't retired yet. If you give him a cane, he may not use it to help walk. It's like beating you. In a few years, when I work as a researcher and utilize my spare energy, I will be able to use it. Zhou Ji didn't mind, this is called being prepared for the future. Mom turned her head and happened to see Zhang Fengyu's smiling face on TV. She was somewhat dissatisfied with her father's fixed gaze and poked him with a stick and needle in her hand. Dad turned his head and looked at Mom, feeling confused and puzzled. Mom, however, walked freely with her needle and thread, as if nothing had happened. Just right, by the way, I'll send the ledger to your little sister Lu. End of this chapter.